Hi, my name is Christopher Thomas. I work for the Lancaster County Housing and Redevelopment Authorities, where my title is Data and Compliance Analyst. My responsibility is for managing the Lancaster County HMIS, or Homeless Management Information System. Locally, our HMIS is called Empower Lancaster. A request was made for an explanation of how to check the data quality of specific programs in Empower Lancaster. So just a bit of quick background. Every time a client is created and every time a client is enrolled in a program, there are going to be opportunities to enter data for that client. Some of this is vital information like date of birth, social security number, race. Other information has to do with their experience of homelessness or history of homelessness, their finances, health insurance, disability status. There is a long list of questions that get asked at every new enrollment. Every time a new enrollment is made, the system is going to be looking, or can look rather, at all of those fields to see if it has an answer saved for them. So we talk about data quality. We're talking about basically what percentage of the items that we are required to ask for each client who we enroll, what percentage of those are missing? Either because the question wasn't asked, the client refused, or the client said they don't know. There are some easy ways to check your data quality for any period you like. It could be checking it for a month, for a quarter, for a year. It's flexible. You can check multiple programs at once, although as I walk you through it, I'll make some notes about how it makes the most sense to run this. So this will proceed by me walking you through the steps in Empower Lancaster. There's not very many of them. And as we go, I'll explain what you're seeing, right? So we're going to start by logging in. We'll only be looking at test clients in this video, right? So no real client data will be included here. I intentionally made some mock enrollments to get us something we could look at that would not call up real client data. We're looking at Sheldon here, but my test client is enrolled too. So the steps you're going to take to get your data quality report. First, you will change your role from case manager, if you are in here as a case manager, to supervisor/director. If you're already by default in that role, supervisor, director, you're fine. You don't need to do anything. Now, click this wrench icon on the left where my mouse is circling here. Then click the word reporting, then compliance reports. Here, there's a bunch of different compliance reports. You'll notice one of them does say HMIS data quality report. You're welcome to use that, but I am going to walk you through the steps using the APR report. I'm going to do this because the APR does all kinds of different things. And generally speaking, if you're wondering about your clients, your program, your performance, it is almost always going to be in the APR. So we'll just direct our attention there. So again, supervisor director role, wrench, reporting, compliance reports to get here. Then click APR 2026. Now, what we're looking at here is report criteria. We're giving it the filters to use to generate the report. We need, at a minimum, a start date, an end date, an organization, and a project. I'm going to run it for the month of August 2026. Now, I realize it's not over yet. That is something to consider, is that if you're going to do this for a month, it makes sense to probably do it for a closed month. Because that is data that's kind of already in the books that I need to go back and have fixes made. But you can run it for any period you want, even a single day if you want. Run it for a whole year, it's up to you. I'm going to leave this organization's set. No, it's not true. I'll change this to my organization. Lancaster County Homelessness Coalition. And my project is a old project that I'm using just for test purposes here. So I needed to enroll the clients somewhere. You will obviously have your own programs that you'll be enrolling clients in, but I don't. So I'm using one that's not currently in use just so we could see the full experience here. So that's why Lancaster VA is being used. So now I've selected my program. So start date, end date, month of August. Organizations, Lancaster County Homelessness Coalition. Project, Lancaster VA. The only step that remains now is to click on report down here where my mouse is jiggling in the bottom right. Now a new window appears and the report will load. It can take anywhere from 5 to 10 seconds to 30 seconds or more, depending upon what period, like how long a period you've run it for and how many programs you've run it for. Something I meant to say earlier when we were setting those report parameters, I'm just going to minimize this window really quick, is because of the way the APR works, you should only run this for your organization and one project at a time. Without giving too much detail, the reason for that is that the APR is going to naturally deduplicate clients. So if Christopher has got enrollment in 3 different projects that your organization operates, he will only show up on the APR one time. He'll show up under his most recent, his newest enrollment. The problem with that is the data quality is not calculated just for the client, it's calculated for the enrollment. So Christopher could hypothetically have really high quality data for the most recent of those 3 enrollments and not show as having any errors. But his other 2 enrollments might be riddled with errors, and the APR won't tell you that. So while it'd be tempting to say, well, I'm just going to run this for all my programs, I want to get it just in one place. You will be better served if you run this report once per program. There is not a workaround for this. I apologize. I know it's extra clicking, but it really does work much better that way. That means that you're not going to be leaving anything out mistakenly. So now our APR has loaded. This is the APR information page. It just shows you what we've got here. Everything we just told it. Org, project, dates. I see here we have 2 active clients, 2 active households, which makes sense because I enrolled Christopher Thomas and I enrolled Sheldon Pyro, so they're enrolled. The only thing I need to do now is click on this rightward facing arrow up here to get to the second page, then click the second link, hyperlink to Q5 and Q6 tables. These are the data quality tables. When I click this, it will again load for a few seconds. Now we're looking at our data quality report. You'll notice up here, 1 of 3, so it has 3 pages. We're looking at the first one right now. We're going to walk through these tables in some detail. I'm not going to go into too much detail because there are a lot of rows in here. First is the report validation table. Generally speaking, you don't need to worry too much about this. This is essentially the table that the APR is using to check for things that are not possible. So if we've got more adults, or we've got more adult heads of house than there are households, that shouldn't be possible. We only have 1 head of house per household. So some of those little things it's checking. It's also giving you a summary of what's in the report, right? So a great example here would be number of stayers is 2, number of adult stayers is also two, right? So we've also got no leavers. So this is kind of an overview, basically, of what's in your report. It's not the one you need to worry about, however. The ones you're worrying about start here with Q6A. Before I go into depth, I'm just going to navigate to the next 2 pages. The tables that matter are Q6A, personally identifiable information. Next page. Q6B, universal data elements. Q6C, income and housing data quality. Q6D, chronic homelessness. And just to point it out, even though we can't really do too much to change it, Q6E is timeliness. We'll talk about each of these in some detail in just a second here. So each of these tables are set up the same way. And that is, you've got a list of data elements, which is what they call the field, the item, pick the word you want. It is just the question that got asked at some point. And then it's got possible errors we might have. Client doesn't know / prefers not to answer is one. Information missing is another. Data issues are a third, and then a total, which would add them all up. For name, SSN, DOB, and race ethnicity. That's everything in this Q6A table. I see here that I have a 100% error rate for SSN, a 50% error rate for race and ethnicity, and no error in name and no error in DOB. So it looks like I've basically got 3 separate issues. Two are in common and one's different. If I want to know who are these 2 people missing their social security number, I can find that out via this link. You'll notice that my mouse changes from a pointer to a finger when I mouse over the title of that table. If I click on it, another subreport loads that is going to show the client detail for those data errors. So we should see both Christopher and Sheldon in here because, like I said, we only have 2 enrolled clients and there were 2 SSN errors. So evidently 100% of our clients have a social security number error. And here they are. There's Sheldon, there's Christopher, there are their client IDs, and there are the issues, right? Sheldon has a race. Christopher said client doesn't know. And neither of them have an SSN. So here are the issues: name issues, SSN issues, DOB issues, race issues. You'll notice that some are blank because there is no issue. No issue in name, no issue in DOB. 2 issues in SSN, 1 issue in race. So let's just say I'm trying to clean up my August 2026 data. And to clean it up, I have to go client by client and fill in missing data that was not collected at entry. This is giving you the information you need to get there. This especially right here, the client ID. If I highlight this, right click and copy, now I've got Christopher Thomas's client ID. If I go back to Empower Lancaster, I'm going to go back to this briefcase, which is the case management menu. You can find the client by pasting that client ID and then clicking search. Goes right to him because only one person has that client ID. And you'll recall Christopher is missing his SSN, which this confirms it's blank. And he's also missing his race, which does not show up here in this summary view. But the good news is they're both in the same place. In fact, all of the things in this table, I'm going to go back a page by clicking on this circled arrow to go up to the next level. All of the items in this first table, PII, they all appear in the same place. They're all going to appear in the client demographics page. You can very easily get there by clicking on this little arrow to drop that down and then clicking on demographics. Christopher's demographic page loads. There I see SSN, data not collected. So that means that the question wasn't asked. It wasn't that the client preferred not to answer, that they didn't know, and it wasn't that we got part of an SSN or a full SSN. It was that we didn't ask the question. So let's just say we are able to get Christopher's last 4. I would want to change this field here, which is like the data quality field, to approximate or partial. Now when I click in here, I can enter in those last four. But actually, just to prove a point, I'm going to try something else. I'm going to do full SSN. I'm going to put in 999999999 as Christopher's SSN. Just going to show you something. Christopher is also missing his race and ethnicity, and there I see race. Client doesn't know. Well, I want to change that. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to give Christopher a response here because I was able to ask the question. Now I know. Add selected, save. Okay, so I just gave this an SSN and a race for a client who was missing it. If I go back to this report and I click on this circle button, arrow, that will refresh the report, and we should now get different results in that table because we fixed some of those data errors. So what it's basically doing here is it's running the report again in the same window. So it's gonna be a refresh. It'll be up-to-date information based upon the changes that we just made. Okay, so you'll recall we had one race ethnicity error out of 2 people, so this was 50%. Now it's 0% because no one is missing their race and ethnicity. You'll also recall we had 2 SSN errors for 2 clients. We had a 100% error rate. Well, we fixed Christopher's. We put in 999999999 and saved it. But now I still have that 100% error rate. You'll notice that while this was 2 before, now it's 1, and now this is 1. Data issues really just means that the system is seeing a number that it knows can't be right. So it's not that it wasn't answered. That would be the first 2 options. It's that it was an impossible response. There's a few of these for SSN to be aware of. One is that no one has a single digit for all their SSN numbers, and no one has an SSN that begins with the number 9. Those are 2 things that can't happen, right? So it knows to look for those things. So in Christopher's case, we want to go back and double check that SSN. Now, I'm not actually going to do that right now because I don't want to give Christopher an SSN that someone else might possibly share. I kind of want him to have that dummy SSN. So I'm going to leave this, but this is just to give you the idea of how to get back to these individual things and fix them. And like I said, this gets done kind of by the table. So we looked at Q6A. I'm now going to page over to page 2 and look at Q6B, data elements. This is a mix of things that are on the client demographics page and ones that are specific to that enrollment. I've got 5 items here: veteran status, start date, relation to head of household, enrollment COC, and disabling condition. This is saved on that same client demographic screen. It is saved right here. So veteran status is in there. And there we have our 1 veteran status error. Now I know it's pretty easy. Obviously it's Christopher. I was just looking at it. Sheldon obviously has his, right? Project start date, relation to head of house, enrollment COC, and disabling condition are all specific to that enrollment. And for the most part, they're found on the HUD Universal Assessment. So now we're going to be kind of getting into the weeds a little bit, because we're not just talking about correcting that one client's record. We're talking about this person maybe having multiple enrollments in multiple programs, and each of those enrollments having its own series of assessments. All of those series of assessments are more data elements, items that need to get answered and can hypothetically be missing. So again, right now we're looking at this program with just my organization's enrollments there. So if I want to figure out how do I correct that disabling condition error, Start the same way I started before by clicking on this link here. And in the client sub report that shows up, I'll follow the same step of looking for the client ID, picking who I want to fix, copying their client ID and looking them up. The steps that follow from there will be a little bit different, and I'll need to show them to you. Okay. So again, our error was a client was missing their veteran status. There's Christopher again. His veteran status is unknown. Client doesn't know, prefers not to answer. His disabling condition is also client doesn't know, prefers not to answer. So just in the interest of time, we know where veteran status is found. We're not going to go to fix that right now. We're going to worry about fixing this disabling condition, which, like I said, is on a specific assessment that we need to navigate to. I'm going to do that by, again, copying this client ID. We'll assume it was a different client. You wouldn't have to do this, obviously, if you were doing this for Christopher 2 times. You're going to look that client up. And then I'm actually going to switch over to the case manager menu because this is how most people interact with the system, and it's kind of the most common view. It also is, I find, the easiest to get places, right? So we're trying to fix Christopher's disabling condition. He didn't answer the question, and we need to get that. I will get to that assessment by clicking on Assessments here on the left side of the screen, and then selecting HUD. And then going to HUD Universal. Now I could make you a list, but it's going to be kind of hard. You're going to need to kind of get a feel for what is where. HUD Universal has got different questions than the HUD program and the HUD financial. As you go, you'll become familiar with them, and you will know off the top of your head the disabling condition, yes, no, is on the HUD Universal. Here it is. Christopher has one HUD Universal, but hypothetically, you could have many. So you're going to want to find the one that corresponds to the program that you're doing your cleanup for. So if Christopher had 10 of these, you need to find the right one. If he had multiple in the same program, which is possible, people come in and out of programs, you want to make sure that you're looking for the one that is more than likely the most recent one, right? Because that's the assessment you're trying to fix under this open enrollment. To get to the assessment to fix it, click on this assessment date and time. And now here are the answers. Now I saved these maybe 20 minutes ago. I see disabling condition, client doesn't know. Well, this is an error. We have got some non-answers down here, doesn't know, prefers not to answer, data not collected, that will all show an error. So what we really want to try to do is figure out, does Christopher have a disabling condition, yes or no? And we'll say Christopher does. We were able to ask him later. He does have a disabling condition. Save that. Now I've updated that data element on that HUD Universal for that assessment, that HUD Universal for that enrollment. Now, when I reload this page, that error is no longer there. We fixed that one. The same could happen with client location, which is also on the HUD Universal. I really should have shown you that earlier. Client location is pretty hard to miss. It's a required field, so you can't not answer that. You wouldn't typically find a client location issue. Relation to head of household can be tricky if you've got multiple adults. You may need to change the relation to head of house so that only one person is self. Self means head of house. And project start date is also usually a gimme. When you enroll the person, you're going to tell it what date they started on. So there's very few project start date errors you'll find. But of course, if you find any of these you can't figure out, you say, well, you told me to look here and I can't find it, you can always email me at cthomas@lchra.com and I'm happy to walk you through it. For now, we're just going to move on to the next table. There's only a few more to look at. We looked at universal data elements. Now we're going to look at income and housing data quality. These have to do with exit destination and income. Income at start, income at annual assessment, and income at exit. Exit destination is pretty straightforward. We don't have any to be missing right now because Christopher and Sheldon are both open. But it works the same way, right? If we had a missing destination, we need to go back to that assessment and enter an exit destination. It might say data not collected. It might say no exit interview completed. You can go back and change that, and this would give you a list of who is missing them. But in fact, if I click on this link again, it would give you a list of everyone who was missing any of these things, because a person might be missing multiple, right? Maybe they were automatically exited, meaning they didn't have an exit financial assessment, which is where finances go, and they didn't have a HUD program at exit, which is where exit destination goes. So a person might have multiple, pardon me, multiple errors in the same table. So how you structure this, right? Do I want to fix everybody's HUD financials and then everyone's HUD programs, or do I want to do it one client at a time? It's kind of up to you, but it probably makes the most sense to fix one client at a time, because it'll just mean a little bit less clicking around. So here we go. Here's our sub report. Christopher, again, is the only person with any errors. He's missing his at entry income data, right? So we didn't save his income when he came in, whether that be he had income or he had no income. Evidently, whenever we enrolled him, we failed to answer that question. And that's it. He's not missing income and sources of annual assessment because he's only been enrolled for a half hour. And he's not missing income and sources at exit because he hasn't been exited yet. But you can use your imagination to see how these could change, right? If you've got clients who were enrolled for 365 days or more, this will trigger and it will start looking for an annual assessment whose date corresponds to their anniversary date. The range is plus or minus 30 days it considers acceptable. But the expectation would be that every person who's enrolled for over a year and every subsequent year, they're getting an annual assessment. And then that exit is straightforward. If Christopher had been exited in this report period, we would expect that he had a HUD financial assessment at exit. For right now, he's open, he hasn't been exited, we're not worrying about those things. We just have to get his income at entry. So same story, once again, you would highlight that client ID, copy it, go into Empower Lancaster, look that client up. Again, I realize we already have Christopher, but we're imagining it's someone else. Now, again, go to Assessments, HUD. That was the same as last time. But now, rather than going to the HUD Universal or the HUD program, I want to go to the financial assessment. Click on this button here, and now I see a list of every financial assessment Christopher ever had. Now I see he has had many financial assessments, so we get a little bit of practice here differentiating. It just so happens that his Lancaster VA enrollment, the test enrollment we're working with right now, is the top of the list because it's the most recent one. But let's say we were looking back a few months. Well, maybe we're looking back to his April 2026 coordinated entry system enrollment. This is the one I would want to edit. So again, to edit this enrollment or assessment, I'm sorry, click on the date and time. And now I see the problem. He has income from any source, data not collected. So we didn't ask the question. It's not that he said no, it's not that he said he didn't know. We just didn't ask. So we want to change this to one of the two options, yes or no. If Christopher does not have data, a no will suffice. And then we would click down here, save no income. If he does have income, we want to pick a source of income, a frequency, and enter an amount. And save. So now Christopher has got financial assessment saved with information under that enrollment. And again, when I reload this, the errors are all gone. In fact, there's no rows at all in this table because no one's got any errors. Now, when I go back up a level, you'll notice that this has not changed, right? So you need to refresh this at each level for it to update. Unfortunately, it doesn't update the whole thing. So while we updated the client sub-report, we didn't update the data quality reports. This will take an extra second. And then that 0% should show up under income and sources at start. There's just one more thing I want to talk about in this report. So I'm going to page over. There we go. No more errors. The last thing I want to talk about here is chronic homelessness. Now, historically, just in my experience working in Lancaster County Homeless Services, we've struggled with getting complete chronic homelessness data for a lot of our clients. And the reason why is understandable. There are actually a surprising number of fields that feed into determining client chronic status, chronic yes versus chronic no. And you have to have answers to all of them to determine it, right? So those are going to be disability status, disabling condition, yes, no, right? Date homelessness started, number of times homeless in the last 3 years, and cumulative length of time homeless in the last 3 years. If you haven't got all 4 of those, it can't calculate chronic homelessness. And here I see in that chronic homelessness table, we have got 2 total records in this row. This is combining shelter, street outreach, so 2 client records. And it's telling me here that we don't have anyone who's missing date this episode of homelessness started, which is good. But we have 1 person who's missing number of times homeless and 1 missing number of months homeless. So 50% of our clients, 1 out of 2, we can't calculate chronic homelessness for, meaning we can't say whether Christopher's chronically homeless or not. If I want to check that, again, I click on the title of that table and a sub-report loads. Now, there's Sheldon, there's Christopher. We scroll over to the right, and where are the errors? There it is. Number of times, number of months. This person has an entry assessment where the client doesn't know, prefers not to answer, the data not collected, or was null for homeless episodes 3 years, and then ditto homeless months 3 years. So those are those last 2 questions I mentioned. Cumulative number of, or I'm sorry, number of times homeless in the last 3 years, and then cumulative number of months homeless in the last 3 years. Christopher evidently is missing both of those. This, you can again, you could copy here, find the client. This is found in assessments, HUD, HUD Universal. I want to open Christopher's HUD Universal. You'll recall we went in here a minute ago to look at this disabling condition. That's not a problem, but these last 2 are. Number of times the client has been on the streets, in emergency shelter or safe haven in the past 3 years, including today, and total number of months homeless on the street, in emergency shelter or safe haven in the past 3 years. Both our client doesn't know. Now, why is this a problem? And why is it kind of a little bit confusing? Christopher is disabled. He has a date his homelessness started, and it's 8/1/2025. Today is 8/20/2026. So Christopher's been homeless for more than a year, and he's disabled. Therefore, he should be considered chronically homeless. It is still going to require these last 2 questions be answered in order to satisfy that. So the options you're going to have here is going to be number of times will vary from never, which I wouldn't expect to see very frequently, if at all, up to 4 or more times. Let's say Christopher's been homeless continuously, so it's 1 time. And the total number of months is going to start with 1 month, up to more than 12 months. Well, Christopher's been homeless one time for more than 12 months, right? We're describing the same episode of homelessness. He's been continuously homeless since August 1, 2025. So that's still one time more than 12 months. I'm going to save this now. Now we see chronic homeless, yes. So that's filled in. And I'm just going to go back a level, reload the page. And now go over. We have got no one missing chronic status. Okay, last thing really quick. Timeliness here is just going to calculate the number of days between the date that you performed the entry or exit and the date on that entry or exit, right? So Christopher and Sheldon, they were both enrolled today. Today is 8/20/2026. Their enrollment start date was 8/20/2026. Therefore, we have two with a 0-day delay. It's exactly the same day. Less than 1 day you would not expect to see because that would mean it was done in the future. 1 to 3 days is pretty common and is totally fine. That means that you didn't do it the same day, but you did it the next day, the day following, or the day following that. Once you get past 4 to 6, 7, 10, or 11 or more, that is where you want to watch out because it's a stipulation. There are a lot of contracts that get issued that data entry is timely, meaning it's done within 3 days. Therefore, you want all your client entry and exit records to fall in these two rows, 0 or 1 to 3. And that is kind of the best explanation I can give for how to look at data quality. One more really quick thing while we're here that is a little bit confusing is you might notice that this table here has got 2 columns. Count of clients for DQ and count of clients. Why are those different? They look the same here, right? 2, 2, 2, 2, 0, 0, 0, 0. This is only going to be relevant for street outreach programs. Street outreach programs have got a special field called date of engagement. We've got a specific workflow set up for a shelter/outreach intake where you would be prompted for a date of engagement when you enroll a client. So you'll be asked to enter it. But if you need to enter it later, or if you need to change it, it is on the program enrollment dashboard, which you can get to by going to case management program enrollment. And in that row, that street outreach program, there'll be a little blue button, the check mark. If you click on that, you'll get prompted to enter the date of engagement. This is basically going to be saying for street outreach programs, count of clients for DQ. Those are the clients who had a date of engagement entered. Count of clients is everybody, regardless of whether they had a date of engagement entered. HUD has put this in as a kind of way to sidestep data quality for people who have not yet engaged in service. Maybe you start the enrollment, but admittedly it takes time to enroll somebody. So while you got the enrollment started, you had to kind of put a bunch of placeholder data not collected so you could finish it planning to come back later. Well, obviously every time you do that, you're gonna have a lot of data quality errors because they're all missing. That data of engagement is there to exclude that person from the data quality table until you're able to finish their enrollment, like go back and get those questions figured out. It can be a little finicky, tricky to use, but that's why there's 2 columns here. The other quick thing I want to point out, it's really crucial for a lot of programs, is exit destination, right? So one of the things in this table, in the third of these, was destination. When client is automatically exited, or if they are exited with client doesn't know, prefers not to answer, or data not collected, they're going to come up here as an error under exit destination. If you're missing an exit destination, it cannot possibly count as being positive, right? It's automatically considered a negative exit, same way as if they exited to the streets, right? So not answering is not a kind of door 3 that lets you get out of the, was it a positive exit or not? You really do have to get this for every exit, right? To get to that destination and update it, I will show it to you. I'm not going to be able to actually demonstrate because neither Christopher nor Sheldon were closed from this program. But you would get there by going to Assessments, HUD program, and then specifically look for the program you're trying to fix up at exit, because at exit on the HUD program is where we save exit destination. So that's where you need to go to fix exits. Assessments, HUD program, find the at exit, open it by clicking on this link, and then at the top, you won't see it here because this is Christopher's entry assessment. You would see rather at the very, very top here, exit destination. That's where you could enter where they went after they left the program. Okay. Again, any questions? cthomas@lchra is my email address. If you ever see anything that is confusing to you, you feel like you see something I didn't explain in this video, you try to follow a step I described in this video and it did not go as intended, you can always email me. I'm happy to do this live with you or just take a look at what you did and see what might have happened. But yes, my best explanation for fixing data quality using the APR. Thanks.